Hello, I'm Jill Bennett. I'm a historian in Whitehall, and I've written a book called 6 Moments of Crisis Inside British Foreign Policy, which is trying to look at British foreign policy decisions from the inside out and without hindsight as far as possible. One of the chapters in my book is about the Suez Crisis, which is something that a lot of people think they know an awful lot about, and it's been used through the years as a kind of rod to beat successive British governments with. Now, I'm not looking at the most controversial episode of that, which is really what they call collusion, because I'm looking at what led up to it. I think that that's actually what counts in the Suez Crisis. Right at the very beginning, when Nasser nationalised the Suez Canal and Anthony Eden's Conservative government decided that they had to try and reverse that decision, they had a cabinet meeting where they made that decision. They asked the military to draw up a plan for enforcing it if necessary. And they crucially decided that they wanted to try and unseat Colonel Nasser, or as we would now call it, regime change. Now, of course, it didn't work out that way, as we now know, but at the time, most ministers thought that it would be a relatively easy thing to do to force Nasser into changing his position. They thought they'd have support from other countries, including the Americans, a decision which turned out to be entirely wrong, and they thought that militarily it would not be too difficult to do. They also thought that the Egyptians were not capable of operating the Suez Canal on their own. All those perceptions turned out to be wrong. But of course, the ministers taking the decision at that time didn't know that. Another important thing to remember about Suez, which is often overlooked, is that actually at the time, military were making plans for a war against Israel, because Israel kept attacking British allies such as Jordan, border raids and so on, to whom we were bound, the British were bound to help if Israel attacked. So the British government faced the ridiculous situation where they might end up fighting Israel, an ally of the United States, indeed an ally of Britain in a certain sense, with a lot of French people in the Israeli armed forces, when the people that they really wanted to fight, that is the Egyptians under Colonel Nasser, sat by on the sidelines smiling at the whole thing. It was a very paradoxical situation, but it set up what was to become the breeding ground for collusion. Of course, there are a lot of other factors that people are aware of, such as Eden's ill health, and a certain amount of indecision amongst ministers, a certain amount of post-colonialism in their attitudes. But the fact was there was an awful lot going on at the time elsewhere, in Europe and in other parts of the world, which gave the British government a great many problems to think about. And they thought that Suez was something they could solve quite quickly. They were wrong, but they didn't know that at the time.